بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين. So what we're doing is we're going through an anthology of the various forms of the miraculous nature of the Quran. Now maybe you're thinking, what does that mean? Everything that we've been talking about for the last 7 days, the Quran is unique as a legislative text in human history to bring about these orders of structured behavioral guidance. We call this al-i'jaz al-tashri'i, the legislative miracle of the Quran. And so there are many different angles that we talked about, specifically 5 of them. The 5 objectives of Islam. Preserving life, first and foremost. Human life must be protected and preserved, which is why smoking is haram. And so all of the teachings that talk about how to preserve life are multi-layered, we talked about. They're not just like, don't kill people. There are so many different angles. For example, kulu min al-tayyibat. Right now we're finding out over 1 million people a year are dying because of major gut diseases, and the primary culprit is refined sugar. Yeah, this is not pseudoscience. This is not the opinion of the Imam. This is standard understanding of modern medicine. Just like everybody thought it's not really a big deal to smoke back in the 1950s and 60s. Y'all remember that? I remember riding on planes, everybody smoked. You go into the Safeway in the grocery store, everybody's smoking, right? You go into a restaurant, I'll take the non-smoking section. You remember all that? That was before people knew that we're all doing something that's very harmful to us, right? So that's life. What's the next one? You got to be alive to do what? Religion, exactly. In order to promote monotheism in its best way, there are so many different teachings of the Quran that methodically come from so many different angles. It's not praying and reading Quran and fasting. Those are probably less than 10% of the whole story of how to preserve your faith. So if you were thinking that's religious, then now you're seeing kind of the culturalized, narrow kind of scope you've been raised in. So there's so many different ways. One of those is being an intellectual, as we talked about. And so the concept of preserving religion also means to give freedom of religion to other people who choose not to believe. Because then what would happen if we forced them to believe? Would it be real religion? It would be hypocrisy. And there's so many different things in the Quran that the Quran is very unique amongst all scriptures, amongst all legislative texts in human history. I'm not saying this just because I'm Imam and this Ramadan you're supposed to say stuff like that because it sounds really religious. No, these are the facts when you study them. That's how your heart will grow. That's how your faith will change your life and the lives of those around you. It's not supposed to be that Imam change everybody's life. It's supposed to be each believer changes people's lives. It's not supposed to be the Imam teaches everybody. It's that every believer is a teacher of everyone. The Sahabas, how many of them got their degree from Medina? How many of the Sahaba have a degree from Azhar? Abu Hanifa, where's his degree? 0 degrees. He was an intellectual. He stood out as an intellectual. He sat with many different people who taught different things. And then he thought on his own and cultivated it. And we have many people like that throughout history. Each and every one of you should strive to be this. She said, you just told me I had to be Abu Hanifa. Stop seeing him as a prophet or an angel. He's a human being like you and I. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He took a path. So then what's the next? Family. You got to preserve the family. There are so many teachings we talked about last night that preserve and cultivate a proper family. If you follow that, you can't go wrong. But if you follow your desires or the desires of those who raised you who are following other people's desires, which oftentimes are offshoots or exaggerations or pure innovations of the religion, if you go back to the texts, أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ. All of you obey Allah. All of you obey the messenger. Now think to yourself, that's what the Quran said. It said at the beginning of the ayah, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, O you who believe. It didn't say Ya ayyuhal mashayikh wal imams. This is secularism. This is Christianity. The priest does everything. He's the religious guy. I'm just going to do my thing. And you got to be careful how you get caught by your surroundings. And their surroundings are not just here. Their surroundings are through our governments overseas. They've been remote controlling us since they left colonialism. So it's time for us to wake up and know and master and learn and propagate these 5 things. What's number 4? Intellect, he said. To promote the intellect, which is why using drugs and alcohol is haram, because it takes you away from a proper mindset where you can thrive as an intellectual. So many things about seeking knowledge in the Quran. The Quran talks about this message is for those who think and contemplate and ponder and rationalize and reflect. All these different verbs for intellectualizing. Are we as the Muslim Ummah right now known to be the most intellectual people on the earth? Is it not that 60+% of the Muslim world is illiterate still? We have to change this. And again, how we approach literacy, is it governed by spiritual focus, or is it on their terms, the people who are atheists pretty much, that set the curriculum here, right? For all the way through college, right? So it's crucial for us to gauge how we do that. And then the last is wealth. The way human wealth is exchanged, the way you earn it, the way you can make deals, how you should be distributing it, how you should be giving charity. There's so many different specific teachings, different methodologies within the Quranic construct. And that's just your constitution. The Sunnah is this vast practicality of all of those things. And so Imam al-Juwayni, Imam al-Haramain, anybody know who Imam al-Juwayni is? Abu Mu'ali. Okay, so Abu Mu'ali, he was the teacher of who? Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. You've heard about Ihya Ulum ad-Din. So his teacher is Imam al-Haramain al-Juwayni. He lived in the 4th century of Hijrah, so about 1,000 years ago. In this treatise he wrote called Fiqh al-Mawazanat, the understanding the balances of religion, he wrote about the 5 necessities of religion. And he said that there are 5 fundamental things that the entire divine law was meant to uplift and preserve, and the divine law was to protect those from harm. And that is life, religion, intellect, family, and wealth. Now you think about that for a moment and try to find a 6th that you need to have a healthy society. Go ahead. Whatever you think up fits inside of one of these 5. And what was he learning from? What is Imam al-Juwayni pulling from? Aristotle and Plato and Socrates? Where's he coming? Come on, Quran and Sunnah. He's coming from the Quran. Now this Quran was given to what? An illiterate guy in the middle of the desert, grew up as a shepherd. He did some trading business. Is it possible that such a man came up with this sophisticated system that covers all aspects of a healthy society and methodically comes with the most eloquent presentation of these things in the Arabic language? Is that possible? Impossible. And that's why we call it a miracle. Because a miracle fundamentally is something that no one else could do it. That you would say, I can't even imagine that person did it on their own without some supernatural intervention. You see? And so that is how we look at it. So it is crucial for every Muslim to build their foundations like this. Because when you have these foundations and somebody comes to you and says, oh, but I heard that the Prophet married this many people. What about how old was Aisha? And then you're like, oh no, what about our religion? You will know that these statements do not even begin to crack the foundation. They're opinions about what people think about some event. They don't carry, there's absolutely nothing they could bring to you to say, here is harm that was proved unjustly taught by the religion of Islam. I will give anybody in here $1,000 cash if you could prove to me, or any Islamophobe, or all your Islamophobic neighbors and classmates and whoever, or teachers in college, bring any of them. Bring me one element where Islam causes harm to people without it being protecting the other people from harm. You see? And you'll see every single teaching that exists in Islam is uplifting individual social welfare in these 5 things, and protecting these 5 things from harm from the individual and from society. This is something that it is a travesty that if you knew that the source of this very profound order is in a book and you don't read it. So may Allah guide us to read the Quran and bless us in the Quran.